WWE has most profitable quarter ever. By Observer Staff. August 3, 2020. For a number of reasons, as it turns out, the pandemic was the greatest thing for WWE's business as they posted the most profitable quarter in their history. It's not that they overcome the pain of the pandemic. They outright benefited from it, with more consumer product sales, higher network numbers, and the real difference maker, far lower cost to produce television. Profits quadrupled in the quarter, blowing away all estimates, due to saving $51.6 million in media costs. The vast majority of those savings was the lower cost of producing television the way they do it now in the Performance Center, no longer running live, and taping multiple shows on successive days as opposed to live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in different parts of the country with far more wrestler, production people, and costs. For one, taping 2 weeks at a time for each show, and taping shows on successive days, saved travel costs greatly. Producing a show in a small building greatly cut down on the production budget, not to mention the fewer production people and costs that were already lower were cut almost in half from there by generally taping 2 shows at a time. Plus there was savings on uplinks by no longer doing any shows actually live, as even when taped the same day, they never actually went live. The second positive was a huge increase in subscribers to the WWE network. The number was 195,000 above what would have been normally expected as of June 30th. There are a number of factors involved here. One is that WrestleMania had so many people subscribing for free as compared to the past few years, that many of them didn't cancel and stayed on, as paying subscribers. Another reason, arguably the most important, because ESPN's pay-per-view numbers for UFC were so much higher than previously, and AEW also set records in pay-per-view, is that with sports bars are closed, and people are no longer getting together in large numbers for pay-per-view party. Thus if you have, let's say, 5 people watching a WWE show together, now maybe you'd have 1 or 2, and if the others wanted to watch, they'd buy the WWE network when they wouldn't have needed to in the past. In addition, the WWE network changed with 2 other factors. The free month gimmick where you could watch the pay-per-view, and then cancel, has been dropped. There are no more free months. While they now have a free tier, the pay-per-view shows and a lot of the programming is not available on that free tier. Plus with that free tier, that you don't even have to sign up for, more people are exposed to an aspect of the WWE network. The free tier constantly promotes the paid tier, where the most attractive content resides, like the PPVs, Undertaker's Last Ride, and other new and old footage. All of this has led to more people becoming new subscribers, at least short-term. Total views of at least 1 minute of different programming on the network were up 55% from last year, even though the subscriber average number for the quarter was down 1.6% due to the gains coming late in the quarter. For what it's worth, when Vince McMahon was asked about the increase, he passed to J.R. Donland, who had none of those answers aside from the new free tier. There are a few things going on, he said. I am not going to touch of anything specific on the free version, but obviously, launching that is a contributor. But I just think in general, our promotion across our platforms. We are doing new things across the digital and social ecosystem, as well as with our TV partners. You would have been able to sample content on ESPN or FS1 driving back to the network. It should be noted that the ESPN shows were before WrestleMania, and WrestleMania paid was the lowest for any WrestleMania in several years, so that has to be largely ruled out as a key factor. We talked about some of the compelling content we have had, everything from Undertaker's Last Ride, and we are an attraction business, said Donlan. I think we have had some really fantastic cinematic mock attractions in our recent PPVs. And then the last piece would be, there has just been some macro industry factors, which is just a general growth in digital viewing and some that's accelerated post-COVID. We didn't hurt ourselves by going to the free as opposed to a 30-day free trial, said Vince McMahon. We have not hurt ourselves, and that much we can definitely say. But it does have to be noted, when interest appears at a low point since at least 1996, that network subscriber numbers have increased so strongly over the last 3 months, and mainly the month of June when the free month was dropped and the free tier was launched. Our own experience is when people pirated shows, they got exposed to them. It didn't hurt numbers as much as we thought and did help exposure. When the pirating was shut down, subscriptions increased far beyond expectations. It proved the axiom that the people who pirate stuff if they couldn't get it for free wouldn't pay for it anyway to be far more false than we had ever believed. But that was a short-term boost, and while those numbers stayed at that level, logically the big gains from that point on weren't going to happen, and it was a one-time surge. Doing clips gives the exposure for free without the entire show, and seems to be the happy medium everyone is doing, but every marketing gimmick has a shelf life of how long it works and then it stops working. But the key is, WWE has found a new gimmick when the old gimmick of 1 month free ran its course, and in literally 1 month, June alone, has turned around nearly 2 years of declines. Another aspect is that streaming has gotten more popular across the board during the pandemic with more people home. Then again, more people are home to watch television, and there is less sports competition, and WWE had struggled badly there. What's notable is that the record profits came during a quarter where revenues were not only much lower than last year even with the new television deals, but were slightly down from analysts' expectations. The general expectation was $231 million in revenues and $11.5 million to $12 million in profits. The actual numbers were $223.4 million in revenue and $43.8 million in after-tax profit, basically quadrupling expectations. Last year's numbers, which included both all the live events associated with WrestleMania and the Mania show itself, a Full House show schedule, and payment for a Saudi Arabia show, none of which happened this quarter. Last year's second quarter grossed $268.9 million in revenue and ended with a $10.4 million after-tax profit. Thanks to the current administration, the company was down to paying 20.5% tax, from prior levels of closer to 35% a few years ago. Last year, with far lower profits, the tax rate was 25%. The stock price closed on July 30th at $45.43 per share, giving the company a $3.517 billion market value. The quarterly numbers were not reported until after the market closed. In after-hours trading after the numbers were released, shares rose to $48.16. It also should be noted that it was not the cost-cutting of talent salaries that led to the record profits. All main roster talent, and a number of the furloughed and fired employees, were being paid their regular salaries through July 17. So the $4 million per month savings in that category will likely lead to $12 million more in added profits next quarter. The WWE Network on June 30th had 1,690,000 subscribers, broken down as 1,229,000 in the US and 461,000 outside the US 3 months earlier. Just days before WrestleMania, the numbers were 1,083,000 in the US and 412,000 outside the US, so the gains were 13.5% domestically and 11.9% outside the US. The strongest growth outside the US was in India. For comparison, during the same 3-month period in 2019 there was a 0.4% decrease in the US and 1.2% increase overseas. In 2018 it was a 6.9% increase in the US and 8.3% increase outside the US in quarter 2. Because of the huge increase in profits, the company's plans to buy back stock, which they had dropped in April, is potentially back on. While not official, they said that they may resume a $500 million expenditure to buy back stock with the belief the stock price will increase. Based on the current profit margins, the stock price is very low. The only red light regarding a strong increase to the past $60 to $80 per share range is the uncertainty that the huge rights fees, which are totally carrying the company at this point, may not be maintained in the next contract that would start in late 2024. There is a big feeling Fox way overpaid, and USA was forced to overpay because Fox really wanted Raw. WWE has already had to renew a number of international deals, including the previous number 2 deals in the UK, at substantially less money. In addition, the company has noted that profits will be down once they start touring and going back to live weekly television, particularly early on if they have to run arenas with limited capacity. Unlike in the past, where investors were more bullish on the prospects of 3 million to 4 million network subscribers and growing from there, which never materialized, there is a realization that only numbers that really matter are rights fees. They're dropping overseas, and the next round are likely to be determined by ratings in the 18 to 49 demo primarily, which have dropped badly in recent months. Analysts listen to Vince McMahon's excuses, such as injuries, or needing to be patient because they have to build new stars, and now the excuse is the pandemic, but many are growing weary of excuses. Analyst Brandon Ross had written an article pessimistic about WWE stock long-term because of the belief the ratings declines have continued with no end in sight. His feeling was those in television will pick up on it with lower rates for U.S. renewals in 2024 and a lower company value due to it. The piece noted that some of the ratings decline were COVID-related, noting that every wrestling show has declined. But they noted AEW in July was up 11% from April while Raw and SmackDown continued their descent, both having dropped 15% since April. They also noted Vince McMahon has promised changes multiple times, and there have been short-lived experiments. But that change really hasn't happened. They also pointed to WWE's inability to create new stars, and there is very little youth on the men's side, even at the mid-level. Not mentioned is the aging out of the audience, which makes it less desirable to advertisers, and that also has had no end in sight, and the aging issues have grown for both NXT and SmackDown in particular, with media audiences hovering between 55 and 57 years old. And unlike baseball and golf, which appeal to older audiences than WWE, they are both high-prestige sports with a much higher income fan base, making them more advertiser-friendly. Ross also noted that when Paul Heyman was let go, the focus was put back on established older stars, and viewer declines have continued without building new stars. They noted the company has a few years to turn this around, as the next set of negotiations are likely for around 2022. They also talked about the value in selling the network programming to Disney, Fox, or ESPN. Ross noted 3 months ago McMahon said to have patience in the ratings because they need time to build new stars, then noted the firing of Heyman, who was trying to make new stars. Ross directly asked why Heyman's direction was abandoned and why he was fired. Vince McMahon didn't answer either question. Ross did give McMahon an out as to be looking bad, as he noted AEW's ratings comeback by pointing out NXT has come back as well, and brought up Paul Levesque's success with NXT and whether he could be used on Raw and SmackDown creative to rebuild those numbers. The problem is that while NXT has come back at one stretch during the pandemic, it also had lows in recent weeks, and overall, even when viewers were high, it was mostly increases over 50, and that audience has continued to age and be the oldest of any wrestling show in the country. Vince McMahon said that the lack of similar declines in NXT and AEW were because they were new. It's something that's new and what have you, and it's up to us to make Raw and SmackDown feel more youthful, he said. That is where we are going, and as far as continuing on, I say what was new in building characters, and you always have to build characters, constantly. And it seems to me that as far as Paul Levesque helping out on Raw and SmackDown, that happens. It's all hands on deck in terms of all that we do. As far as Paul Heyman is concerned, he did, I thought, a very, very good job in terms of creative. If anything, the established shows should be hurt the least because of being an established part of people's lives. In particular SmackDown, which is so many homes that don't have the competition with news and now sports that Raw, AEW and NXT have, and with the Friday night advantage of people no longer going to bars and other places, and the numbers of the past should have actually increased, or at best, held the audience far better than the other shows. McMahon had earlier been asked about the ratings. As far as ratings are concerned, again, more than any other sport, surely our audience is a part of the program, McMahon said. It's audience interaction that always is the plus, and again, it goes all the way back to the origination of the genre in terms of the game. So the audience is integral to our success and our television ratings, again, because of the interaction and lack thereof. Notwithstanding that, I think that we can have more compelling characters, better storylines, new characters coming into where we are right now, and more of content that's not necessarily in the ring, but yet one that focuses on their personalities and their story outside of the ring. What's notable is studying minute by minute, and where they grow is content in the ring, and where they fall off is focusing on personalities and doing things outside the ring. It's more pronounced with the AEW and UFC fan base, but it is the same with NXT and WWE shows. With WWE, it has been similar, such as how the Viking Raiders / Street Profits out of the ring segments were death to ratings every week. The lesson of minute by minute is that more non-match time, the lower the numbers. Pre-taped interview packages on pro wrestling are usually death as far as keeping numbers. While you absolutely need to develop personalities, that is not the key to growing ratings. That is the sacrifice of ratings that you make to try and make stars that pay off down the line, either in selling more tickets / PPV / network subs, and making stars, which can mean ratings in the future. But just this statement showed how out of touch Vince is, because that stuff, and you have to do it, that he says they need more of to build ratings, actually nowadays has proven to hurt ratings. Stephen K. Hall asked about ratings declines of the past and how long it will take to get the viewers back. He was concerned that maybe the viewers are moving to streaming services and asked if it would take months or years to get the audience back. Realistically, it's probably not bouncing back significantly until they are back to running arenas. And numbers were declining year over year even before that. Getting back to even January or February numbers may never happen again. It absolutely won't happen without the creation of younger superstars and far better creative. It just takes months, McMahon said. I mean, again, the key here is to be in front of an audience, and that's the main thing. Certainly, getting in front of an audience, they are like a third person in the ring, so to speak, and right away, you get action and reaction. You are able to shoot the audience as we shoot the audience a lot more than any sport, because they are such an integral part of what we do, so I would like to think it's months away. There was also a blame on the declining international rights on countries being affected by COVID. But that's ridiculous. The UK deal was based on declining ratings in recent years and how WWE treated Sky by giving them more of a pay-per-view cut and then not telling them about the network killing pay-per-view until after the deal was signed. Plus, WWE ratings plummeted in the market. Italy was similar. It was not related at all to COVID, but to high costs with low ratings returns and the station willing to give it up. Riddick said the smaller international deals are because they are challenged by COVID. He also noted that there are no major renewals coming up, which also indicates they aren't close to a new Middle East deal. When asked about the purchase of Evolve and, out of left field, the company getting into MMA, Riddick said, Evolve was a content purchase deal and very straightforward and every small in size in terms of investment. Right now, we are not looking at any MMA opportunities. Hopefully, they will come along. We do have investments in certain new technologies in new areas, and we are looking for opportunities, but there's nothing imminent there. They also noted that a return to arenas will likely hurt profits because they will likely not be able to sell the same amount of tickets with social distancing. Virtually all revenue this quarter came from television rights, network subs and pay-per-view, which combined brought in $200.1 million of the $223.4 million in revenues, with the rest coming from consumer products. Last year in the quarter the number was $197.0 million, but that included $50 million in a payment from Saudi Arabia. Regarding whether the originally scheduled November date in Saudi Arabia will take place, it has not been cancelled and nothing is certain, but they are not expecting it. The decision hasn't been made yet, said Vince McMahon. Although it is based on where they are in their economy, I would doubt it will happen. Expenses when it came to television, network and pay-per-view were $118.5 million, down from $170.1 million for the same period last year, or a savings in the quarter alone of $51.6 million. That right there is the profit margin and then some. Everything else is almost immaterial. As far as total revenue, network plus pay-per-view numbers declined from $51.8 million to $49.4 million. That's due to a decline in pay-per-view and a slight decline in average subs during the quarter. But the end of the quarter was up from last year, so that should be ahead of last year in the next quarter report. The new deals led to television rights increasing from $69.0 million last year in quarter 2 to $132.9 million this year. Television advertising and sponsorships fell from $18.9 million to $13.3 million. As far as ratings are concerned, as compared to last year, Raw in quarter 2 was down from 2,403,000 viewers to 1,838,000, or 23.5%. Keep in mind that this was mostly the Heyman period, and since then, after the 2 weeks of nostalgia bumps, ratings have declined significantly from even that figure. USA Network declined 25.9%, but keep in mind most of those declines were a combination of the Raw decline and losing SmackDown. If you take both Raw and SmackDown out of the mix in quarter 2 last year, the USA Network averaged 699,000 viewers. If you take Raw and NXT out of the mix this year, the average is 648,000. So NXT is doing roughly the prime-time average for the network. Actual comparisons to the real USA Network decline not related to WWE is 7.3%, so it's not similar to the Raw decline, even though WWE using honest statistics would give you the impression both declines are basically identical. Cable as a whole was down 0.8% from last year during the same quarter. If you figure that ESPN is usually the number one non-news station and almost no live sports, as did all the other sports networks, cable would have likely been significantly up had there still been live sports. SmackDown last year on USA averaged 2,009,000 viewers in quarter 2. This year on Fox it grew 4.5% to 2,099,000. But that's with adding 33.7% more homes available and being on a far stronger platform. Any increase of less than 30% has to be considered a failure in the move from USA to Fox. The Fox network fell 4%, but if you take out the Friday drop from last year, they'd actually be pretty much equal. Network television as a whole dropped 12% from the same period last year. Again, much of that decline would be the absence of things like the NCAA basketball tournament, baseball season and the NBA playoffs. The decline sounds like less watching television due to the pandemic, and technically that is true, but it's because of fewer first-run shows and no sports. Last year, in a quarter that included WrestleMania and all the Mania activities, the live event profits were $12.4 million. This year, running no shows, due to various deals and money and advertising costs of shows that didn't happen, the live events division lost $4.5 million. Profits from consumer products increased from $5.2 million in last year's second quarter to $7.6 million. Licensed products like video games, console games and mobile games saw revenue increase in the quarter from $9.4 million last year to $9.7 million, an increase seemingly having to do with people home more and playing more games. The industry as a whole has grown during the pandemic. In addition, WWE received revenue from certain WWE talent being used in other video games such as King of Fighters All-Star. The mobile games, WWE Supercard and WWE Champions, had 15% revenue growth over the same period last year. Merchandise sold through the website increased from $6.6 million to $12.6 million, both increases being examples of the pandemic helping WWE business. A key to the increases was collectibles, notably 6 new championship belts, notably a Rock Brahma Bull title and a Triple H signature title belt. The company currently has $547.9 million in cash on hand, the most it has ever had.